I should have known something was wrong when Lena started wearing perfume to bed. My wife of 3 years had always been practical about everything: her marketing presentations, her morning coffee routine, even the way she folded our towels into perfect thirds. But for the past month, she'd been coming home from work smelling like expensive flowers and making excuses about late nights at the office with David, my business partner and supposed best friend. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Tonight was different. I was lying in our king-sized bed in our downtown Boston loft, staring at the exposed brick ceiling and listening to the rain tap against our industrial-style windows. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when I heard her key in the door. "Eli?" Lena's voice carried across our open-concept apartment, slightly slurred. "You awake?" I sat up, running my fingers through my dark hair. At 38, I'd built our tech startup from nothing, writing code in this very apartment while Lena handled the business side. Now we had 40 employees and investors breathing down our necks for the next big breakthrough. "Just wondering if I should start charging David rent," I called out, forcing my voice to stay light. "He's been keeping you later than I do." Lena appeared in our bedroom doorway, her blonde hair mussed and her lipstick smudged. She was still beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads at investor meetings and made other men jealous of me. Or so I'd thought. "We need to talk," she said, kicking off her heels. Those 4 words hit me like ice water. In 3 years of marriage, Lena had never needed to talk about anything she couldn't handle herself. She was the type who solved problems before they became conversations. "Okay." I patted the bed beside me. "What's going on?" Instead of sitting, she paced to our floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the city lights. Boston stretched below us, all glass and steel and possibility. We'd bought this place when our first round of funding came through, back when we thought we were building something together. "I'm pregnant," she said without turning around. For a moment, I felt pure joy. We'd talked about kids, made vague plans about timing and nursery colors. Then she kept talking. "It's David's baby." The words hung in the air like smoke. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, could feel the world shifting beneath me like a house built on sand. "David's," I repeated slowly. "We've been together for 3 months. Now she turned, her green eyes bright with tears that somehow didn't look real. "It just happened, Eli. You're always working, always buried in code, and David, he pays attention to me. He makes me feel alive." I stood up, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. "David. My business partner, David. My best man, David." "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "The David who was in my wedding. The David I've known since college. The David who helped me write our company's mission statement about trust and innovation. Eli, please. The David who's been coming to our Sunday dinners for 2 years, eating my food, drinking my beer, and apparently screwing my wife." Lena flinched. "It's not like that." "What's it like then?" I could feel something cold and calculating settling in my chest, pushing down the rage and hurt. "Explain it to me, Lena. Help me understand how my wife and my business partner have been playing house behind my back." "He satisfies me in ways you never could," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "He's passionate, spontaneous. When we're together, I feel like I'm the only woman in the world. You treat me like a business partner." "You are my business partner. You're also supposed to be my wife." "I still want to be." She stepped toward me, her hands outstretched. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. We can make this work. You'll be an amazing father, and the baby will have the best of everything. David and I, we can be discreet." I stared at her. "You want me to raise David's child while you continue sleeping with him? It doesn't have to be weird. Lots of modern families have complicated arrangements." "Complicated arrangements?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what we're calling adultery now?" Don't be dramatic, Eli. You're a problem solver. This is just another problem to solve. That's when I knew she'd never loved me. Not really. To Lena, I was a means to an end. A stable provider, a reliable partner, a safe choice. David was her passion project. I was her retirement plan. You're right, I said quietly. This is a problem to solve. Relief flooded her face. I knew you'd understand. You're so logical about everything. That's one of the things I've always admired about you. Of course I understand. I walked to my dresser and pulled on a t-shirt. I understand perfectly. Where are you going? To solve the problem. I left her standing in our bedroom and walked to my home office. Our apartment had 2 bedrooms, one for sleeping, one for working. I'd spent countless hours in this room, building our company from an idea into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Every patent, every line of code, every late-night breakthrough had happened at this desk. I powered up my laptop and started typing. First, I transferred our joint business account, all $2 million of it, into a shell corporation I'd set up months ago for tax purposes. Lena had signing authority, but she'd never paid attention to the technical details. That was my job. Next, I filed paperwork to dissolve our business partnership. David owned 30% of the company, Lena owned 20%, and I owned 50%. But all the intellectual property, the patents, the proprietary code, the trade secrets, were registered under my name alone. I'd been paranoid about protecting our work from corporate theft. I'd never imagined I'd need to protect it from my own partners. By 3 a.m., I'd transferred every asset, every patent, and every piece of valuable intellectual property to my shell corporation. David and Lena would wake up tomorrow as minority partners in a company that no longer owned anything of value. But I wasn't done. I opened my email and began typing a message to our entire staff, our investors, our clients, and everyone in our extended professional network. Due to personal circumstances involving my business partners, I'm announcing the immediate dissolution of our current partnership structure. Effective immediately, all company operations will continue under new management. Our upcoming product launch remains on schedule. As a personal note, I want to thank everyone who sent congratulations on my upcoming wedding. Unfortunately, the ceremony has been canceled due to my fiancée's pregnancy with my business partner's child. I wish them both the best in their new arrangement. Best regards, Elliott Green, founder and CTO. I scheduled the email to send at 9 a.m., right when our staff meeting was supposed to start. Then I called our building's locksmith. For an extra $200, he agreed to come out at 4 a.m. to change the locks on our apartment. I told him my wife had lost her keys, and I wanted to surprise her with new security. While I waited for the locksmith, I packed Lena's clothes into suitcases and boxes. Every dress, every pair of shoes, every piece of jewelry I'd bought her over the years. I was methodical about it, the same way I debugged code, systematically, thoroughly, without emotion. The locksmith finished his work just as the sun was rising. I tipped him an extra $100 and asked him to help me carry Lena's belongings down to the lobby. Moving out? He asked. Something like that. By 6 a.m., everything Lena owned was stacked neatly beside the mailboxes in our building's marble lobby. I left a note on top. New locks, new life. Your key is with David now. Then I went back upstairs, made coffee, and waited. Lena was still asleep when my phone started ringing at 9:15 a.m. David's name flashed on the screen. Eli, what the hell is going on? I just got 50 emails asking if it's true about you and Lena and... Good morning, David, I said calmly. Sleep well? Did you send an email to our entire company about Lena being pregnant? I sent an email about the partnership dissolution. The pregnancy was just context. You can't do this. We have contracts, obligations. Actually, I can. Check your partnership agreement. Section 12, subsection 4. In case of moral turpitude by a partner, the majority shareholder has the right to dissolve the partnership with 48 hours notice. Silence. I'm giving you 48 hours, I continued. Though technically, sleeping with your business partner's wife probably qualifies as moral turpitude. I could make a case for immediate dissolution. Eli, let's talk about this. We can work something out. We already worked something out, David. You worked out how to sleep with my wife, and I worked out how to sleep better at night. I hung up and blocked his number. 20 minutes later, Lena burst through our apartment door, or tried to. The new locks held firm. Eli, she pounded on the door. Eli, open this door right now. I walked over and spoke through the wood. I'm sorry, but this is private property. You'll need to find somewhere else to live. This is my home. This is my apartment. Check the lease. Your name was never on it. The pounding stopped. I could hear her crying in the hallway, could hear other tenants opening their doors to see what the commotion was about. Our building was full of young professionals who loved gossip almost as much as they loved their morning lattes. My things, she said finally. I need my things. Check the lobby. More silence. Then footsteps running toward the elevator. I poured myself another cup of coffee and opened my laptop. I had work to do. Chapter 2. The setup. The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and very satisfying conversations with very angry people. David tried to sue me, of course. He hired Patricia Walsh, the most expensive attorney in Boston, and filed an injunction to stop the partnership dissolution. But my lawyer, Michael Rohan, was better. Mike was a thin, sharp-faced man who looked like an accountant but fought like a pit bull. He'd helped me structure the original partnership agreement, and he'd built in more escape clauses than a submarine. Your friend David has a problem, Mike told me over lunch at our usual spot near the courthouse. He can't claim financial damages from the partnership dissolution without admitting he violated the moral turpitude clause. And he can't deny the moral turpitude without perjuring himself because you have evidence of the affair. What kind of evidence does he think I have? Mike smiled. Hotel receipts charged to the company credit card. Flowers delivered to your wife at the office with David's name on them. Text messages between them that were backed up to the company server, which you own. I hadn't actually looked at any text messages, but I didn't need to. David's guilty conscience was doing most of my work for me. What about Lena? She's staying at the Marriott downtown. David's paying for it, but his credit cards are maxed out. Apparently he's been spending a lot of money on your wife. That stung more than I expected. David had always been flashy with money, expensive dinners, weekend trips, designer clothes. I'd assumed he was just enjoying his success. Now I realized he'd been courting my wife with company profits. There's something else, Mike said. Lena's been calling your office, trying to get back into the building. Security won't let her up without your authorization. I'd changed all the locks at our office, too, and informed the building management that Lena Carter was no longer authorized to enter our suite. Technically, she was still a minority partner in the old company, but the old company no longer existed. All our assets had been transferred to Green Technologies, LLC, a company that had exactly one employee and one owner. She wants to meet with you. Says she has something important to discuss. Tell her to make an appointment through proper channels. Eli. Mike leaned forward. I've been practicing law for 20 years. I've seen a lot of divorces, a lot of business disputes. This is getting ugly fast. It was already ugly. I'm just making it visible. That afternoon, I drove to my old friend Rick's auto shop in South Boston. Rick Martinez had been fixing my cars since college, and he was one of the few people who knew the whole story. I'd called him the day after Lena's confession, needing someone to talk to who wouldn't judge me or try to fix everything. You look like hell, Rick said, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. He was a big man with tattoos covering his arms and a laugh that could be heard 3 blocks away. Today, he wasn't laughing. Feel worse than I look. Lena came by yesterday. That surprised me. Here? Yeah. She was crying, asking if I knew where you were staying. Said she needed to explain something to you. What did you tell her? Told her I fix cars, not marriages. Rick gestured toward his office. But she left something for you. We walked into the cluttered office behind the garage. Rick's desk was covered with invoices, coffee cups, and a framed photo of his daughter. He pulled an envelope from under a stack of papers. She said it was important. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on Lena's personal stationery, the expensive kind she used for thank you notes and dinner party invitations. Eli, it began, I know you're angry, but you're not thinking clearly. We built something together, and you're destroying it out of spite. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to ruin everything we've worked for. David and I are willing to buy out your share of the company for fair market value. We have investors lined up who are interested in our vision. You can take the money and start over somewhere else. This could be good for everyone. I read it twice, then handed it to Rick. She wants to buy me out of my own company, I said. Rick read the letter and shook his head. That woman's got balls, I'll give her that. She thinks I'm being emotional, irrational. Are you? I considered the question. Was I being irrational? I'd destroyed my marriage, dissolved my business partnership, and humiliated my wife in front of everyone we knew. A rational person might have tried counseling or mediation, or any of the dozen other options that didn't involve burning down 3 years of my life. Maybe, I said. But I'm also being thorough. That evening, I had dinner with Detective Janet Sanders, a former Boston PD investigator who now worked as a private detective. I'd hired her to look into David's finances, and she'd found some interesting information. Your partner's been living above his means, Janet said over her pasta. She was a small, intense woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He makes good money from the company, but he's been spending more than he earns. On what? Expensive restaurants, weekend trips, jewelry, designer clothes, all charged to credit cards that are now maxed out. He's also been taking cash advances against the company's line of credit. Is that legal? Depends on your partnership agreement, but it's definitely not smart. Janet pulled out a folder. There's more. He's been meeting with investors without you, trying to set up a side deal. She showed me photos of David having lunch with Harrison Webb, the CEO of our biggest competitor. More photos of him meeting with venture capitalists who'd previously tried to buy us out. He's been shopping your company behind your back, Janet said. Probably for months. I studied the photos. David looked confident in all of them, like a man who knew exactly what he wanted. He'd been planning to cut me out long before Lena got pregnant. The affair was just the excuse he needed to make his move. There's something else, Janet said. Your wife's been meeting with these same people. She showed me more photos. Lena and David having drinks with Harrison Webb. Lena shaking hands with venture capitalists. Lena signing papers in what looked like a lawyer's office. They've been planning this for months, I said. Looks that way. The pregnancy probably accelerated their timeline. I paid for dinner and drove home through the rain. Boston looked different at night. All shadows and reflected light, like a city that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. I'd lived here for 15 years, but tonight it felt like a foreign place. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I had emails from clients asking about the partnership dissolution, messages from employees wanting to know if they still had jobs, and a formal letter from David's attorney demanding I restore his access to the company accounts. I ignored all of them and opened a new document. If David and Lena wanted to play games, I'd show them how the game was really played. I started typing a detailed report of every financial irregularity I could find in our company records. Every unexplained expense, every questionable charge, every time David had used company money for personal purchases. It was all there in the accounting software. I just had to organize it properly. By midnight, I had a 40-page document that painted a clear picture of financial misconduct. David had been stealing from the company for over a year, taking money that belonged to all 3 partners and using it to finance his affair with my wife. I attached the document to an email and sent it to our accountant, our attorney, and the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. Then I sent a copy to Harrison Webb with a note. Thought you should know what kind of partner you're considering. but I still wasn't done. I opened our company's social media accounts and posted a statement. Green Technologies is proud to announce our independence from former partners who prioritized personal relationships over professional ethics. We look forward to serving our clients with renewed focus and integrity. Then I posted photos of our latest product prototypes, the ones David and Lena had been planning to sell to our competitors. Now everyone could see exactly what they'd been trying to steal. My phone started ringing immediately. I let it go to voicemail. The first message was from David. "Eli, you're making a huge mistake. Call me back." The second was from Lena. "This is insane. You're destroying everything we built together." The third was from Harrison Webb. "Mr. Green, I think we need to talk." I deleted all of them and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Chapter 3. Escalation. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The story had exploded overnight. Our industry was small enough that everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than venture capital. By morning, every tech blog in Boston was running some version of the story. Startup partners split over affair scandal, and Green Technologies founder exposes partners' financial misconduct. The coverage was brutal for David and Lena. TechCrunch had picked up the story and added details about the company credit card charges and the secret investor meetings. Someone had leaked photos of David and Lena together, including one particularly damaging shot of them kissing outside the Ritz-Carlton while I was supposedly at home working on code. My phone rang. Mike Rohan's name appeared on the screen. "You need to see the news," he said without preamble. "I've seen it. Channel 7 is running an interview with your wife in 20 minutes. I turned on the television and found the local morning show. The anchor was a perky blonde woman who specialized in human interest stories and local scandals. "This morning we're talking with Lena Carter, the marketing executive at the center of a very public business breakup that's rocking Boston's tech community. Lena, thank you for joining us." The camera panned to show Lena sitting in the studio, looking perfectly composed in a navy blue dress and pearls. She'd done her makeup carefully to hide the stress of the past week, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Thank you for having me, Jennifer. Let's start with the obvious question. Is it true that you're pregnant with your business partner's child?" Lena's smile never wavered. "I'm pregnant, yes, but the situation is much more complicated than the media reports suggest. My husband has been under tremendous pressure lately, and I think he's having some kind of breakdown." A breakdown? Eli is brilliant, but he's always been unstable when it comes to personal relationships. He sees betrayal everywhere, even when it doesn't exist. David and I work closely together on marketing initiatives, and Eli became convinced we were having an affair. I nearly threw my coffee cup at the television. "But you are pregnant with David's child," the anchor pressed. "The paternity of my child is a private medical matter," Lena said smoothly. "But I will say that my husband's public accusations are both hurtful and false. He's destroyed our company and our marriage based on paranoid delusions." "What about the financial irregularities he's alleged?" "David Lynn is one of the most ethical businessmen I've ever worked with. Every expense he charged to the company was legitimate and pre-approved. Eli is manipulating the records to support his conspiracy theories." The interview continued for another 10 minutes, with Lena painting herself as the victim of an unstable husband's paranoid breakdown. She was good at it. Calm, reasonable, sympathetic. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her myself. When it was over, I called Mike. "She's smart," he said. "By claiming the affair never happened, she's trying to make this look like a business dispute caused by your mental health issues." "Can she do that?" "She can try, but she's made a tactical error. If she's claiming the affair never happened, then she can't explain why she told you the baby was David's. She'll say I imagined that conversation too." "Maybe. But we have evidence of the affair, and now we have her public denial on record. When we prove she lied on television, her credibility will be destroyed." I spent the rest of the morning in meetings with lawyers, accountants, and a crisis management consultant who specialized in tech industry scandals. Everyone had the same advice: stay quiet, let the lawyers handle it, don't make any public statements that could be used against me later. But I'd never been good at staying quiet. That afternoon, I drove to our old office building. I still had access to the executive parking garage, and I wanted to see if David was brave enough to show up for work. His BMW was in its usual spot, but it looked different. Someone had keyed "cheater" into the paint on the driver's side door. The windshield was intact, but there was a parking ticket under the wiper blade and what looked like coffee stains on the hood. I took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Green Technologies had occupied a corner suite with views of Boston Harbor. The receptionist, Amy, looked up nervously when I walked in. "Mr. Green, I wasn't sure if you were still... with everything that's been happening. Is David here?" "He's in his office." "But Mr. Green, there are reporters in the lobby. They've been calling all morning." I walked through the open workspace where our developers and designers had their desks. Most of them looked up when I passed, but no one said anything. The atmosphere was tense, like a workplace where everyone knew layoffs were coming. David's office was at the end of the hall, with glass walls that normally made him visible to the entire staff. Today, the blinds were closed. I knocked and walked in without waiting for an answer. David was sitting behind his desk, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked up when I entered, and I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. "Eli." He stood up quickly. "I'm glad you're here. We need to talk." "Talk about what, David? Your television interview this morning? Your secret investor meetings? Or maybe the $40,000 you've stolen from the company?" "I never stole anything. Every expense was legitimate." "Legitimate?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Janet had taken. "A weekend in the Bahamas with my wife is a legitimate business expense?" David's face went pale. "How did you get these photos?" "I hired a private investigator. Amazing what you can find when you actually look." I showed him more photos. David and Lena at expensive restaurants. David buying jewelry at Tiffany's. David signing papers in Harrison Webb's office. "You've been planning to sell the company for months," I said. "The affair was just a distraction while you lined up buyers." "That's not true." "Which part? The affair or the attempted sale?" David sat down heavily. "Eli, you have to understand. The company was stagnating. You're brilliant, but you're not a businessman. We needed fresh leadership, new vision. So you decided to steal my company and my wife." "I didn't steal anything. Lena and it just happened. We didn't plan it." "You planned everything else." David looked out his window at the harbor. "What do you want, Eli? Money. I can make this right." "You can't make anything right. You destroyed 3 years of partnership, 15 years of friendship, and my marriage. There's no coming back from that. So what's the endgame here? You destroy me and Lena, bankrupt the company, put 40 people out of work? For what? Revenge?" I considered the question. What did I want? A week ago, I'd wanted a successful company, a happy marriage, and a future with the woman I loved. Now I wanted something simpler. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything," I said. "I already understand. You've made sure of that." "No, David. You haven't lost everything yet." I left him sitting in his office and walked back through the workspace. Our employees watched me go, their faces full of questions I wasn't ready to answer. In the parking garage, I found Rick waiting by David's BMW. "Thought you might need backup," he said. "I'm not going to do anything stupid." "I know. But stupid has a way of finding you when you're angry." We drove back to my apartment in Rick's pickup truck. The rain had started again, turning the city gray and bleak. Boston in October was beautiful, but today it felt like the end of something. "You know this isn't over," Rick said as we sat in traffic. "David and Lena aren't going to just disappear." "I know." They're going to fight back. Probably get ugly. It's already ugly. Rick glanced at me. You sure you want to keep pushing this? You've made your point. Maybe it's time to take the win and move on. I thought about Lena's television interview, about David's fake remorse, about the way they'd planned to steal everything I'd built. They thought I was having a breakdown, that I'd eventually calm down and accept some kind of settlement that let them keep most of what they'd stolen. They were wrong. I'm not done yet, I said. What's the next move? I smiled for the first time in days. I'm going to give them exactly what they want. Chapter 4. The Chase and Confrontations. The next morning, I called David and asked him to meet me for lunch. You want to have lunch? His voice was suspicious, guarded. I want to discuss a settlement. Mike thinks we should try to work something out before this gets any messier. What kind of settlement? The kind where we both walk away with something instead of spending the next 2 years in court. There was a long pause. Where do you want to meet? Tony's. 1 o'clock. Tony's was a small Italian restaurant in the North End where David and I used to have lunch when we were first starting the company. It was public enough to feel safe, private enough to have a real conversation. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner where I could see the entire restaurant. David walked in exactly at 1, looking around nervously before spotting me. He was dressed in his usual expensive suit, but it looked wrong on him now, like he was playing a role he no longer fit. Eli. He sat down across from me. You look good. You look like hell. Thanks. I've been better. We ordered drinks and sat in awkward silence for a moment. 3 weeks ago, we'd been best friends. We'd built a company together, shared our dreams and fears, trusted each other with everything that mattered. Now we were strangers negotiating the terms of our mutual destruction. So, David said finally, what kind of settlement are we talking about? I want you and Lena out of the company completely. You sign over all your shares, all your rights to our intellectual property, everything. In exchange, I don't press charges for the money you stole. I didn't steal anything. $43,000 in unauthorized expenses. The receipts are all there, David. Hotel rooms, restaurants, jewelry, weekend trips, all charged to the company while you were sleeping with my wife. David's jaw tightened. Those were legitimate business expenses. Prove it in court. We stared at each other across the table. The restaurant was busy with the lunch crowd, full of business people having normal conversations about normal problems. I envied them. What about Lena? David asked. What about her? She's pregnant, Eli. She needs health insurance, stability. You can't just cut her off. She should have thought about that before she decided to have an affair. The baby is innocent in all this. The baby isn't my problem. David leaned forward. That's cold, even for you. You want to talk about cold? Let's talk about how you planned to sell our company to Harrison Webb while I was working 16-hour days to make our product launch successful. Let's talk about how you used company money to finance your affair with my wife. Let's talk about how you both went on television to call me mentally unstable. We're trying to protect the company. You're trying to protect yourselves. I pulled out my phone and showed him a news article from that morning. TechCrunch is reporting that 3 of our biggest clients are considering terminating their contracts because of the scandal. Our stock price has dropped 40% in 2 days. You've destroyed everything we built. You destroyed it when you sent that email to everyone we know. I told the truth. You're the one who made it scandalous. Our food arrived, but neither of us was hungry. We pushed pasta around our plates and avoided eye contact like teenagers on a bad first date. What do you really want, Eli? David asked finally. I want my life back. I want the company I built with my own hands. I want the wife I thought I married. Since I can't have any of that, I want you and Lena to understand what it feels like to lose everything you care about. So this is just revenge. This is justice. Justice. David laughed bitterly. You're destroying people's lives over a personal grudge. You destroyed my life over a piece of ass. David's face flushed red. Don't talk about her like that. Like what? Like a woman who cheated on her husband with his best friend? Like a woman who went on television to lie about having an affair? Like a woman who's carrying your child while trying to convince everyone she's the victim? She is the victim. We both are. You've lost your mind, Eli. I smiled. Have I? Let's see. I discovered my wife was cheating on me with my business partner. I found evidence that you were both planning to steal my company. I protected my assets and exposed your fraud. Which part of that sounds crazy to you? David stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Sit down, David. Go to hell. He threw a $20 bill on the table and walked toward the door. I followed him outside into the October afternoon. The North End was busy with tourists and office workers, all of them going about their normal lives while mine fell apart in public. David, wait. He turned around in the middle of the sidewalk, his face twisted with anger. What? You want to humiliate me some more? Take more photos for your private investigator? I want you to know that this isn't personal anymore. Not personal? You've destroyed my reputation, my career, my relationship with Lena. Your relationship with Lena? I stepped closer to him. She's my wife, David. She's carrying your child, but she's still legally married to me. Every time you touch her, you're touching my wife. She's leaving you. She hasn't filed for divorce. She's still wearing her wedding ring. She's still using my health insurance and living off money I earned. So technically, you're still sleeping with my wife. David's hands clenched into fists. You bastard! There it is, the real David Lynn. Not the smooth-talking CEO or the charming seducer. Just an angry man who got caught stealing. I never stole anything from you. You stole everything from me. We stood facing each other on the busy sidewalk, two men who used to be friends, now enemies in expensive suits. People walked around us, probably assuming we were just another pair of businessmen having an argument about quarterly reports or market projections. You want to hit me, I said quietly. Go ahead. Give me a reason to call the police. David's face was red with rage, but he wasn't stupid. Assault charges would finish whatever was left of his reputation. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. I watched him walk away, his shoulders hunched with defeat. 3 weeks ago, David Lynn had been a successful entrepreneur with a bright future. Now he was a disgraced executive with no company, no money, and no prospects. The only thing he had left was my wife. I was going to take that away from him, too. That evening, I met Janet Sanders at a bar near Fenway Park. She had more information about David and Lena's finances, and none of it was good news for them. They're broke, she said over her beer. David's credit cards are maxed out, and he's been borrowing money from friends. Lena's been staying at the Marriott, but she can't afford it much longer. Where will they go? David's been talking to his brother in California, might be planning to leave town. That was interesting. If David left Massachusetts, it would be much harder to pursue criminal charges against him. It would also make him look guilty, which might be even more valuable than actually prosecuting him. There's something else, Janet said. Lena's been asking around about you, trying to find out where you're living, what your plans are. She's desperate to talk to you. What's she saying? That you're having some kind of mental breakdown. That she's worried about your safety. I laughed. My safety? She's building a narrative. Unstable husband, concerned wife, tragic misunderstanding. If this goes to court, she's going to claim you're mentally ill. Can she do that? She can try. But it's hard to prove someone is mentally ill when they're systematically destroying their enemies with surgical precision. Janet was right. Everything I'd done over the past 3 weeks had been calculated, methodical, and devastatingly effective. That wasn't the behavior of someone having a breakdown. It was the behavior of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. What's the next move? Janet asked. I'm going to give Lena what she wants. Which is? A chance to explain herself. The next morning, I called Lena and asked her to meet me for coffee. Like David, she was suspicious, but agreed. Unlike David, she chose the location, a Starbucks in Cambridge near Harvard Square. Public, safe, with plenty of witnesses. I arrived first and chose a table near the window. Lena walked in 15 minutes later, looking beautiful and fragile in a way that was probably calculated to make me feel guilty. She was wearing a simple black dress that showed her pregnancy, and she moved carefully, as if the weight of carrying David's child was already affecting her balance. Eli. She sat down across from me, her green eyes searching my face. You look tired. I haven't been sleeping well. Neither have I. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I've been so worried about you. Worried about me? The things you've been doing, the accusations you've been making? It's not like you. You've always been so rational, so controlled. I looked down at her hand on mine. 3 weeks ago, that touch would have meant everything to me. Now it felt like a lie. I've been very rational, I said. I discovered my wife was having an affair. I protected my business interests. I exposed financial fraud. Which part of that seems irrational to you? All of it. She squeezed my hand. Eli, I never had an affair with David. I stared at her. What? I never had an affair. Yes, I'm pregnant, but the baby is yours. I lied about David being the father because I was scared. Scared of what? Of how you'd react to the pregnancy. You've been so focused on the company, so stressed about the product launch. I thought you'd see a baby as a distraction, something that would interfere with your work. I pulled my hand away from hers. So you told me you were having an affair with my best friend? I panicked. I thought if you believed I was cheating, you'd pay attention to me. I thought you'd fight for our marriage. By destroying our business partnership? I never meant for it to go this far. I thought you'd be angry for a few days, then we'd work it out. I never imagined you'd do all this. She gestured vaguely, as if all this was some minor inconvenience rather than the complete destruction of everything we'd built together. You're lying, I said. I'm not lying. I'm trying to save our marriage. What about the hotel receipts, the photos of you and David together? David and I work together. We have business dinners, client meetings. There's nothing romantic about it. What about the investor meetings? The plans to sell the company? Lena looked genuinely confused. What investor meetings? I showed her the photos Janet had taken. Lena and David meeting with Harrison Webb, shaking hands with venture capitalists, signing papers in lawyers' offices. Those were exploratory meetings, she said. David thought we should consider our options if you decided to leave the company. Why would I leave the company? Because you've been talking about it for months. You said you were tired of the business side, that you wanted to go back to pure development work. David was just trying to prepare for that possibility. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Lena had always been a good liar, but this was different. She seemed genuinely convinced of her own story. The baby, I said, if it's mine, we can do a paternity test. Of course. I want to do a paternity test. I want to prove I'm telling the truth. And David? What does he say about all this? David is confused and hurt. He thought you were his friend. He can't understand why you're trying to destroy him over a misunderstanding. I leaned back in my chair. It was a good story, better than her first one. It explained everything, while making me look like a paranoid husband who'd overreacted to an innocent situation. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed it. But I had seen the evidence. I had the hotel receipts, the text messages, the financial records. David had been stealing from the company, and Lena had been helping him. The affair was real, the betrayal was real, and this new story was just another lie. You're very good at this, I said. At what? Lying, manipulation, making me feel like I'm the crazy one. Eli, but you made one mistake. What mistake? I pulled out my phone and played a recording. It was Lena's voice from 3 weeks ago, the night she'd confessed, "It's David's baby. We've been together for 3 months. He satisfies me in ways you never could." Lena's face went white. You recorded me? I record everything now. I've learned not to trust anyone. That's not... I was upset, confused. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, Lena. That was the one time you told the truth. I stood up and looked down at her. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. But she was also a stranger, someone who could lie to my face and make me feel guilty for not believing her. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow, I said. Don't contact me again. I left her sitting in the Starbucks, probably already planning her next move. But it didn't matter what she planned. I was done playing defense. It was time to end this. Chapter 5. The Final Trap. The confrontation I'd been planning for weeks finally came together on a rainy Thursday evening in November. I'd arranged for David, Lena, and several key investors to meet me at our old office building for what I'd described as a final settlement discussion. What they didn't know was that I'd invited some additional guests. I arrived at the building an hour early and set up cameras in the conference room. Janet Sanders had helped me install the equipment, small wireless devices that would broadcast everything to a secure server. I also had a court reporter standing by and a conference call set up with 3 journalists who specialized in tech industry scandals. David arrived first, looking nervous and overdressed in a new suit he probably couldn't afford. Lena came in 5 minutes later, her pregnancy now clearly visible under her designer dress. They sat on opposite sides of the conference table, not speaking to each other. "Where is everyone else?" David asked. "They'll be here," I said. At exactly 7 o'clock, the elevator opened and 6 people walked into our conference room. Mike Rohan, my lawyer, Detective Janet Sanders, Harrison Webb from our competitor company, 2 venture capitalists who'd been courting David, and Patricia Walsh, David's attorney. "What's going on?" Lena asked. "A final settlement discussion," I said. "But first, I want everyone to hear the truth." I activated the cameras and nodded to Janet. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Over the past month, I've been investigating allegations of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage involving green technologies. What I've found is a systematic pattern of theft and betrayal that goes back over a year." Janet began laying out the evidence. Financial records showing David's unauthorized expenses, hotel receipts documenting the affair, email chains proving that David and Lena had been planning to sell the company without my knowledge. "The total amount of stolen funds is approximately $63,000, Janet continued. "But the attempted theft of intellectual property and trade secrets represents millions of dollars in potential damages." David's face was red with anger and embarrassment. "This is ridiculous. Every expense was pre-approved." "By whom?" Janet asked. By the executive committee, which consisted of you, Lena, and Eli. Did Eli approve $43,000 in personal expenses? He knew about the business dinners, the client entertainment. Did he know you were sleeping with his wife during those business dinners?" The room went silent. Harrison Webb looked uncomfortable. The venture capitalists were taking notes, and Patricia Walsh was whispering urgently to David. "The affair is irrelevant to the business issues," Patricia said. "Actually, it's not," Mike interjected. "The partnership agreement includes a moral turpitude clause. Adultery with a partner's spouse constitutes grounds for immediate dissolution without compensation. That clause is unenforceable. We'll let a judge decide that." I stood up and walked to the head of the conference table. "But before we get to court, I want everyone to understand exactly what happened here." I activated a large monitor on the wall and began showing a presentation I'd prepared. Financial charts, timeline graphics, email screenshots, everything laid out in chronological order like a prosecutor's closing argument. David and Lena began their affair in July, I said. By August, they were using company funds to finance their relationship. In September, they began secret negotiations to sell our intellectual property to competitors. The pregnancy was discovered in October, which accelerated their timeline. "That's not true," Lena said. "We never tried to sell anything to anyone." I clicked to the next slide, which showed photos of Lena and David meeting with Harrison Webb. These photos were taken on September 15th. According to Mr. Webb's calendar, which we subpoenaed, this was a preliminary discussion about acquiring Green Technologies' patent portfolio. Harrison Webb shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That meeting was purely exploratory. No offers were made. But offers were discussed, I said. Specifically, a $75 million acquisition that would have excluded me from any leadership role in the combined company. More photos, more documents, more evidence of betrayal. David and Lena looked smaller with each revelation, like defendants watching their alibis crumble under cross-examination. The plan was simple, I continued. Create a crisis that would force me out of the company, then sell my life's work to the highest bidder. The affair was just a distraction while they positioned themselves to steal everything I'd built. This is insane, David said. Eli, you're having a paranoid breakdown. Am I? I clicked to the final slide, which showed a document I'd discovered in David's email archive. This is a draft resignation letter you wrote for me, dated 3 weeks before Lena confessed to the affair. It thanks me for my contributions and expresses confidence in the company's future under new leadership. David's face went white. How did you get that? You wrote it on your company laptop, which I own. Everything you've done for the past year has been documented on servers I control. The room was completely silent now. Even Patricia Walsh had stopped whispering to her client. So here's what's going to happen, I said. David and Lena are going to sign documents transferring all their shares in Green Technologies to me. They're going to repay the money they stole, with interest. They're going to sign non-compete agreements that prevent them from working in this industry for 5 years. And they're going to do it tonight, in front of all these witnesses. And if we refuse? Lena asked. Then I file criminal charges tomorrow morning. Embezzlement, corporate espionage, fraud. David will go to prison, and you'll be a single mother with a criminal record. Patricia Walsh leaned forward. Mr. Green, you can't seriously expect... I can, and I do. I looked around the room at all the faces staring back at me. David and Lena thought they could destroy my life and walk away rich. They were wrong. David stood up abruptly. This is extortion. No, this is justice. You're insane. You've lost your mind over a relationship that meant nothing. It meant nothing? I turned to Lena. Your affair with David meant nothing? Lena looked trapped. It's complicated. It's not complicated. You chose him over me. You chose money over loyalty. You chose betrayal over trust. Now you get to live with those choices. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Boston stretched out below us, full of people living their lives, building their futures, trusting the people they loved. I envied them their innocence. You have 1 hour to decide, I said without turning around. Sign the documents or face the consequences. The next hour was a blur of whispered conversations, phone calls to other lawyers, and desperate attempts to find some way out of the trap I'd built. But there was no way out. I'd been planning this moment for weeks, anticipating every possible escape route and blocking them all. At exactly 9 o'clock, David and Lena signed the papers. Congratulations, I said as they prepared to leave. You're now free to build a life together, without my money, without my company, and without my forgiveness. David looked at me with something that might have been respect. You really did think of everything. I had good teachers. Lena stopped at the door and turned back to me. The baby isn't my problem. What if it's yours? Then you'll raise it to be better than its mother. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room where we'd once planned our company's future. The cameras were still recording, the evidence was still mounting, and the story would be in tomorrow's newspapers. David and Lena were finished in Boston, probably finished in the tech industry entirely. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt empty. Mike Rohan was the last to leave. You know this isn't really over, he said. They'll try to rebuild somewhere else. Let them try. And you? What's next for you? I looked around the conference room one last time. I'm going to build something new, something they can't touch. Any regrets? I considered the question. Did I regret destroying two people I'd once loved? Did I regret burning down 3 years of partnership and friendship? Did I regret choosing revenge over forgiveness? No, I said. No regrets. But as I walked out of the building for the last time, I realized that wasn't entirely true. I regretted trusting them. I regretted believing in them. I regretted thinking that love and loyalty meant anything in a world where everything had a price. Most of all, I regretted that it had taken me so long to understand who they really were. The Chapter 6. The Crescendo. 3 months later, I was standing on the roof of my new office building, watching the sun set over Boston Harbor. Green Technologies had relocated to a smaller space in the financial district, closer to our clients and farther from the memories. We'd hired new staff, launched our delayed product, and secured funding from investors who appreciated our renewed focus on core values. The scandal had actually helped our business. Clients liked the story of the honest entrepreneur who'd exposed corruption and rebuilt his company from scratch. We were getting more attention than we'd ever received when David was running our marketing. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Sanders. Thought you should know. David and Lena are getting married next week in San Francisco. I looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Their lives were no longer my concern. But as I stood there watching the city lights flicker on, I realized that wasn't entirely true. Part of me would always be connected to them, bound by the shared experience of betrayal and revenge. They'd shaped me in ways I was still discovering, taught me lessons I'd never wanted to learn. The elevator behind me dinged, and Rick Martinez stepped onto the roof, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might be up here, he said, handing me a cup. How'd you know? You always come up here when you're thinking too much. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the harbor traffic and the planes taking off from Logan Airport. Boston was beautiful at night, all possibility and promise. Any word from them? Rick asked. They're getting married. How do you feel about that? I don't feel anything about it. Rick gave me a skeptical look. Nothing at all? I considered the question honestly. How did I feel about David and Lena building a life together in California? About them raising their child far from the wreckage of everything we'd once shared? I hope they're happy, I said finally. Really? Really? They deserve each other. Rick laughed. That's cold, man. It's honest. We finished our coffee and headed back inside. I had work to do, code to write, products to develop, a company to run. The future was full of possibilities that had nothing to do with the past. But as we waited for the elevator, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a California area code. Eli? The voice was familiar, though I hadn't heard it in months. Hello, Lena. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't. Rick raised his eyebrows and pointed toward the elevator. I waved him on and walked back to the roof. How are you? Lena asked. I'm fine. How's California? It's different, warmer. David got a job with a startup in Palo Alto. Good for him. Eli, I'm calling because I wanted you to know that the baby was born last week. I felt something twist in my chest. Congratulations. It's a girl. We named her Sarah. That's a nice name. She looks like you. The words hung in the air between us, carrying implications I wasn't ready to consider. Lena, I know what you're thinking, but we did the paternity test. David is the father. Then why are you telling me she looks like me? Because she does. She has your eyes, your stubborn chin. Maybe it's just coincidence, or maybe what? Maybe some things are more complicated than DNA. I closed my eyes and tried to picture Lena holding a baby who looked like me but belonged to David. The image was too painful to hold. "Why are you calling me, Lena?" "Because I wanted to apologize for everything, for the lies, the betrayal, the way it all ended. You didn't deserve what we did to you." "No, I didn't. And I wanted you to know that we're not happy. Not the way you probably think we are. I don't think about your happiness. David drinks too much now. He's angry all the time, bitter about what happened in Boston. He blames you for ruining his life. I didn't ruin his life. I exposed what his life really was. Maybe, but the man I fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did." I walked to the edge of the roof and looked down at the street 40 floors below. Cars moved through the night like blood cells through arteries, everyone going somewhere, everyone carrying their own stories of love and loss and betrayal. "What do you want from me, Lena?" "Forgiveness, I guess. Or at least understanding." "I understand perfectly. You wanted excitement, passion, something I couldn't give you. You found it with David, and you were willing to destroy everything we'd built to keep it. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I loved you, Eli. I still love you." "No, you don't. You love the security I represented, the life I could have given you. But you never loved me. That's not true. If it's not true, then why did you choose him?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small and broken. "Because I was stupid. Because I thought I deserved more than what we had. Because I was selfish and foolish, and I threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real. And now you want me to make it better. I want you to tell me there's a way back from this. That someday we might be able to forgive each other and move on." I thought about forgiveness, about the possibility of letting go of the anger that had sustained me for months. It would be the mature thing to do, the healthy thing. It would prove that I was better than the people who'd betrayed me, but I wasn't better than them. I was just different. "There's no way back, Lena. What you and David did changed everything. It changed me." "I know. I can hear it in your voice. Then you know why this conversation can't continue." "Eli, wait." I hung up and turned off my phone. Rick was waiting by the elevator when I came back inside. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's perfect. You sure about that?" I looked back toward the roof, toward the city lights and the harbor and all the possibilities that existed in the darkness beyond. "I'm sure." We rode the elevator down in silence. In the lobby, Rick paused before heading to his truck. "You know, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." "Which part?" "All of it. They had it coming." "Maybe." "No, maybe about it. They betrayed you, tried to steal your company, humiliated you in front of everyone you knew. You fought back. You won." "Did I win?" Rick looked at me like I was crazy. "Are you kidding? You destroyed them. They lost everything: money, reputation, friends, future prospects. They're broke and miserable in California while you're here running a successful company. If that's not winning, I don't know what is." He was right, of course. By every measurable standard, I'd won completely. David and Lena had paid for their betrayal with everything they valued. Justice had been served. So why did I feel so empty? I walked home through the quiet streets of downtown Boston, past the restaurants where David and I used to have lunch, past the hotel where he'd taken my wife, past the building where we'd once planned our bright future together. The city was full of ghosts now, memories of a life that had never been as real as I'd thought. Back in my apartment, I poured myself a drink and sat at my desk. My laptop was open to the code for our latest project, a security system designed to prevent corporate espionage. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is David. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked the number and deleted the text. There was nothing left to say. I finished my drink and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about Lena's phone call, about the baby who looked like me but wasn't mine, about the life I might have had if things had been different. but things weren't different. They were exactly as they were, and I'd made my choices just as David and Lena had made theirs. We'd all have to live with the consequences. The next morning brought news that David's new company had folded. According to the tech blogs, investors had pulled their funding after learning about the scandal in Boston. David was unemployed again, his reputation in ruins, his future uncertain. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt nothing at all. That afternoon, I was in my office reviewing code when my assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "He says it's important." "Who is it?" "David Lynn." I looked up from my computer. "Tell him I'm not available. He says he's not leaving until you see him." I considered calling security, but that would just create another scene. Better to handle this quickly and quietly. "Send him in." David walked into my office looking like a broken man. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was unkempt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he'd aged 10 years and 6 months. "Hello, Eli. You have 5 minutes." He sat down across from my desk and stared at his hands. "My company failed." "I heard. The investors found out about Boston. They said they couldn't trust me." "Imagine that. I'm broke, Eli. Completely broke. Lena and the baby. We're living in a studio apartment in Oakland. I can't find work anywhere." "What do you want from me?" "I want you to call off the dogs." "What dogs?" "Don't play dumb. Someone's been calling every company I interview with, telling them about the embezzlement charges. Someone's been spreading stories about my history of financial misconduct to every investor in Silicon Valley." I leaned back in my chair. "That's terrible." "It's you, isn't it? You're still trying to destroy me." "I don't need to try, David. You destroyed yourself. This has to stop. I have a family now. You should have thought about that before you decided to steal my company." David's face flushed red. "I never stole your company. We were partners. Everything I did was legal." "Legal, maybe. Ethical, no. You want to talk about ethics? You've spent 6 months systematically destroying 2 people's lives over a personal grudge. I've spent 6 months protecting myself from people who tried to steal everything I'd worked for. The affair was a mistake, but the business stuff, we were trying to help the company grow. By cutting me out of my own company? By bringing in professional management. You're brilliant, Eli, but you're not a CEO. You never were." I stood up and walked to the window. Boston stretched out below me, full of people building their lives, chasing their dreams, trusting the wrong people. "You're right," I said. "I'm not a CEO. I'm just a programmer who learned how to fight dirty. So call it off. Tell whoever you hired to stop blacklisting me. Let me rebuild my life." I turned around and looked at him, David Lynn, the man who'd been my best friend, my business partner, my wife's lover. He looked pathetic sitting there, begging for mercy. "No. Eli, you made your choice, David. You chose Lena over friendship. You chose money over loyalty. You chose betrayal over trust. Now you get to live with those choices. For how long? Forever? However long it takes. Takes for what? For you to understand what you did to me." David stood up, his hands shaking with rage. "I understand perfectly. I fell in love with your wife and made some bad business decisions. But what you're doing now is pure evil." "Evil?" I laughed. "I'm not the one who committed adultery and embezzlement. You're destroying innocent people. Lena, the baby. The baby isn't innocent. The baby is the product of betrayal. That's sick, Eli. Even for you, that's sick. Get out of my office. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." David walked to the door, then turned back. "You know what the real tragedy is? You could have been happy. You had everything. Successful business, beautiful wife, bright future, but you threw it all away because you couldn't forgive a simple human mistake." "It wasn't a mistake, David. It was a choice. Just like this is a choice." After he left, I sat at my desk and tried to get back to work, but I couldn't concentrate. David's words kept echoing in my mind. You could have been happy. Maybe he was right. Maybe I could have forgiven the affair, worked out some kind of settlement, found a way to move forward. Maybe I could have been the bigger person, but I wasn't the bigger person. I was just a man who'd been betrayed by the people he trusted most, and I'd chosen revenge over forgiveness. Some people might call that evil. I called it justice. That night, I called Janet Sanders and told her to expand her investigation. I wanted to know everything about David and Lena's new life, where they lived, where they shopped, who their friends were, what their weaknesses were. Eli, Janet said carefully, you know this is getting into stalking territory. I'm not stalking anyone. I'm protecting my interests. What interests? They're 3,000 miles away. They can't hurt you anymore. They hurt me once. I won't let it happen again. So you're going to spend the rest of your life destroying theirs? However long it takes. Janet was quiet for a moment. You know, when this started, I thought you were the victim. Now I'm not so sure. I am the victim. I'm just not a passive one. There's a difference between justice and vengeance, Eli. Not in my experience. I hung up and poured myself another drink. Outside my window, Boston glittered in the darkness, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere in California, David and Lena were probably putting their baby to sleep, wondering how their lives had gone so wrong. I raised my glass to the window in a silent toast. To satisfaction, I said to the empty room. Finally. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. There was no satisfaction in this, no real victory. Just the cold comfort of knowing that the people who'd betrayed me were suffering as much as I was. Maybe that would have to be enough. Maybe it was all I deserved.